We now have a fantastic couple of panelist presentations from here on the AT&T sponsored Government Pavilion stage. I want to once again thank our friends at AT&T for making this particular stage possible. And I'd like to introduce two people very well known to the NGA family. Major General Charlie Cleveland, who is the Associate Director for Operations at NGA. He's been in that role only since January, as everybody knows, oversees the execution of NGA's mission across the IC and DoD, and coordinates daily GEOINT operations. Associate Director for Enterprise at NGA. Hello, General. Jennifer Daniel. Yeah, Ms. Daniel is the Associate Director for Enterprise, therefore the functional GEOINT manager for the National System for Geospatial Intelligence, the Allied System for Geospatial Intelligence, all international partners, and the Interoperable GEOINT Global Enterprise. Therefore, also manages the military service NGA support teams. We're going to give each of them an opportunity to say their opening remarks, and then once again, I encourage you to submit your questions on the cards. The people are walking through the audience. Ms. Daniel.
Thank you. We're getting ourselves settled. The first bottle of water that was here, somebody already opened and drank out of, so I had to make sure I had another one. So I am really happy to be here. This has been a great symposium so far, and I'm really impressed with the energy, the enthusiasm, and the sense of community that's here. I've said a number of times, it's almost like having a family reunion with 3,000 people. So it's been good. I have had a lot of you say, so 4,000 people? All right, I stand corrected. Maybe I only know 3,000 of them, okay?
Room to learn.
I got some work to do. Anyhow, well, I've had a lot of people say, so what does the Associate Director for Enterprise do? What do you really do? And my job is all about that second pillar of the strategy. It's all about partnerships. And my job is to lead and manage the GEOINT community across the entirety of that community on behalf of our functional manager for GEOINT, Admiral Sharp. And I am very happy to do that, and I am very happy that all of you are part of that community and part of helping us make our nation more secure. You know, I look at that community and I say it's DoD, it's IC, it's private industry, it's law enforcement, it's FEMA with natural disasters, and it's academia, and everything is represented here today. And what I look at is I look strategically across the entirety of the GEOINT community to say, how can we be better? What kind of capabilities does Charlie need to do a better job? What kind of capabilities do our mission partners need to do a better job? Or what kind of capabilities do they need to provide us with so that we can get the GEOINT that our warfighters and our policymakers need when and where they need it? And then once we identify those capabilities, making sure they stick, making sure they get into whatever requirements document they need to be in, making sure that we're putting them in the programs, that we're establishing the milestones, and that we're hitting those milestones. So we not only identify what's happening, but then we make sure they get delivered. Partnerships is not only applying to what we do in NGA, but it's across the National System for Geospatial Intelligence, it's across the Allied System for Geospatial Intelligence, and with our international partners. And that's all part of what I do, and it's all part of our business. I have been part of this business for over 30 years. I won't tell you how many years, over 30 years, but over 30 years. And the one thing that I've always seen is that our community, when we work together, we can tackle any challenge that's out there. And we've done that over and over again. And it's all about the mission, and it's all about delivering GEOINT. So over to you, Charlie.
Great. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Charlie Cleveland. People, partnerships, mission today, and mission tomorrow. And so fortunately for me, in that grouping of our strategy, I have got what I view as absolutely the best part of the entire effort because my focus is mission today. So as Jennifer is talking partnerships, My real role then comes into capturing as the Associate Director of Operations all things associated with Mission Today. And as we know, those four components are not stovepipes. In fact, they have to interact constantly, and they all have to be synchronized together. But my focus really becomes the larger aspect of Mission Today. And so what does that encompass? It includes analysis. It includes source. It includes our 24/7 operations, our time dominant intelligence capabilities. It includes a number of our outstations to include the Pentagon, to include the combatant commands, to include the larger intelligence community. And so fundamentally, our real role is to talk about that mission today. And just to reinforce what I know our previous teams have talked about every single time, but I do really want to take this opportunity just to reinforce that our agency is absolutely focused on mission, and it really does become the driving factor. And so as we think about a little bit in terms of how do we derive what we're focused on, in some ways we are really moving into, again, a bit of an inflection point and a bit of an opportunity for strategic change. Because, and again, this won't come as a surprise to anybody, but we really are in an era where we are having to shift our thoughts and our efforts and our expertise from what has been a larger counterterrorism fight for about the last 20 years back into this concept of great power competition. And from that really does drive a number of things that we are having to focus on. Going back to look at some of those basics of foundational military intelligence, how we collect it, how we catalog it, how we analyze it, and then how we publish it and disseminate it with our partners. Other components are just much more of a reinforcement on mission areas that are really continuing to evolve. So the cyber area and the space area in particular, we know that those areas of mission are really going to provide tremendous opportunity for the ingenuity and the initiative of this larger community and this larger enterprise. You know, and then finally, we talked about it earlier today, but another area that we are simply going to have to continue to remain focused on is in some ways the larger humanitarian assistance. And so there was a firefighting discussion earlier today, and we have a role in that. We have a role also in being able to support our State Department colleagues, our USAID colleagues, and a number of others that are typically seen as somewhat non-traditional, but we have a role in supporting these disasters that seem to be happening based on climate, based on migration, based on whatever else may be out there. So when I think about finally the mission today, really we are beginning to see some significant changes, but it really provides this tremendous opportunity for us to refocus ourselves on what this community did so well years ago, foundational military intelligence. We have the ability to expand our partnerships and our relationships in new mission areas such as space, and then fundamentally being able to continue to support something that is a little bit more non-traditional with the humanitarian assistance.
You know, Charlie talks about the humanitarian assistance. Yesterday when I was watching one of the opening panels, and it was with FEMA talking about the work that they did in Puerto Rico. And there were the individuals that were in the helicopters with their phones, dropping the points as to where the roads were out, where the bridges were out, where there was damage. And I think to how far we've come since we first started really investing a lot of energy in that partnership with the civil organizations with Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. When we were tacking up the hard copy maps and we were making sure that we were marking things with pencil and magic markers, and how much farther we can go as we use technology to our advantage. And as we are able to have our humans partner with the technology and then make that technology enterprise-wide. And then I also think about the humans and how the humans need to operate. And Sue talked a lot this morning about how no int can save the world. That's my words, but how we need to work together. And it made me also think about how we need to make sure that we continue to operate outside of our silos. So that as we have our imagery analysts and we have our collection managers and we have our data scientists, that they are an integrated team working seamlessly across each other, but across the community as well, and offering and bringing that expertise to bear.
And just to continue that thought in terms of just the value of enterprise and the value of the GEOINT enterprise in particular, you know, sometimes we can be guilty of when we talk about we, we only talk about our specific organization. So in my case, we may just be NGA or we may just be some other entity. But fundamentally, I think as we move forward, we are going to have to continue to really explore the opportunities that this larger GEOINT enterprise presents. And the we has got to be the entire enterprise. And so as Jennifer and I have talked several times, what we need to be able to do is we need to have Sergeant Cleveland sitting on the DMZ at the same level of certification, at the same level of standardization, with the same connectivity and the same capability as a Sergeant Daniels would have sitting in Djibouti or in Afghanistan, or frankly at CENTCOM headquarters or at NGA headquarters. And so when we think about those partnerships and the ability to really manage those, it starts with the enterprise piece. The second piece, from just a pure operational mission standpoint, is the partnerships we have with what I would refer to in some ways as our customers. So fundamentally, it is the larger intelligence community, and it is our partners in the intelligence community. It is the warfighters that are out there. It is the State Department and the USAID people that are out there. And I am increasingly convinced, and we've talked about this with leadership as well, because we do have a pretty good distribution of people around the Beltway, but also people out at the outstations. But I'm becoming more and more convinced that fundamentally our center of gravity oftentimes does become that point of engagement that we have between the GEOINTer and the partner that we're supporting. And if we can get that right, then everything else will flow from that. But if we don't get that point of presence right, then frankly, all the great work that happens at our headquarters or throughout the rest of the enterprise doesn't finally make it. The last area, or the last two areas, of course, the partnership we have and the relationship we have with our allies. And of course, of all weeks to be talking about this, we're hitting the 75th anniversary of the invasion of Normandy and the amazing alliance that led to that. And as Jennifer and I have talked, those partnerships are not always easy, and we always don't agree on every single component, but fundamentally we know that we will not do anything without our allied partners, and that we've got to be integrated with them from the outset. And then really finally, of course, what this represents is our amazing partnership with industry and with the commercial partners. And we also know that we fundamentally as an enterprise are not going to be able to conduct mission today without these relationships with our commercial partners across the spectrum.
So I'm gonna add to 2 points, and then we'll turn over and ask for questions, right?
Yes.
Because I'm seeing the cards come up here, and I'm sure there's a few that we might want to answer.
Absolutely.
Okay, some that we might not want to, but we'll ferret through them. But you know, one of the things as we talk about partnerships that I always tell people is that, you know, our partnerships are stronger than they've ever been, but we can't take them for granted. We have to make sure that we continue to strengthen them, we continue to improve. And the next big lift that's going to come for us to be able to operate together is through technology and through the ability to integrate and to bring the data together. We also set for our goal is 5 eyes as a norm, that we start with 5 eyes. We don't start with no form. We have people who are integrated within our spaces. They're working hand in hand with us. I've got a couple within my organization. I've got one more joining in June, but I'm like, that's 3. We could do better than that. If we're willing to fight with them, then we should be willing to have them work with us side by side. On the professionalization and building that credibility across our workforce and across the entirety of the GEOINT workforce, I'll have to brag a little about the program that's been established for the NSG. We have 10 different lines of professionalization, from imagery analysts to you know, our information and our foundational and our cartography. And we've got over 15,000 government employees who are now certified in GEOINT. And that does give us that ability, for what Charlie was talking about, to understand where we have our strengths and whether or not that Sergeant Cleveland is really up to the task. So with that, I suggest we take questions.
Absolutely.
Unless you want to say anything more.
No.
All right.
Okay, question for Sergeant Cleveland. No, there are no
Okay.
questions for Sergeant
I
Cleveland.
liked calling him Sergeant Cleveland.
Yes,
Yeah, I noticed that. But I think this is really a question for both of you. Is NGA still postured as a combat support agency, and how does that affect the interplay with NGA's role as the GEOINT functional manager? So it's really be interested in both your perspectives on that.
All right. So I will say yes, NGA is still postured as a combat support agency. As I said before, I've been with this organization since before we had an NGA or a NEMA, or we called it GEOINT. And there's one thing that I have always seen is that the warfighter comes first, and when lives are on the line, people do what they need to do. They will overcome any hurdles that are there to make sure that the information is given to the people who need it. I think that as a functional manager, we work across the services. The services are engaged with us, and we look to see where we can share the mission and not be redundant with each other. We look for where that expertise is and how we form it as a whole, because it's not just about the one organization being able to do it, it's about the community being able to support it. There are not enough people in the world to do there's not enough people in NGA to do everything that's needed across the world.
And not surprisingly, I agree. I would say, obviously, I'm new to NGA, and it's not a secret that there is oftentimes a question about, has NGA focused too much on the policymaker or not doing enough for the warfighter, et cetera. And I think fundamentally, we'd all argue we absolutely want to be doing more for every one of those people, but it's not a binary question. Basically, our organization and our larger enterprise has got to be able to support both policy and those young men and women that are out in the field as a part of the military. And so part of that really is manifested, in my opinion, with the concept of enterprise. Because again, what we have got to be able to do is we have got to be able to reach all the way out to that person at the DMZ or sitting in Afghanistan today or wherever else, and everything we focus has got to be focused on getting those individuals the information they need, while at the same time trying to ensure that our policymakers have the best information available. And so it has been something on my mind as I have joined this enterprise and joined this organization, is, are we supporting the warfighter? And fundamentally, I think we always want to be doing more. But at this point, I feel very comfortable in saying that we are absolutely focused on working to support the enterprise and those warfighters.
You mentioned the inflection point. As at this inflection point in intelligence analysis, mission today needs to be able to adapt tools, tradecraft, and techniques of mission tomorrow. Interesting. Do you believe you have the right risk model for your mission today adoption of new tools, et cetera, even with the constant demands for immediate GEOINT support to customers?
Yeah, I'll start that one and you can go. I mean, the question really speaks to something that is foundational about the future of our enterprise. How much do you invest today in terms of being able to continue to support all of those customers, be they warfighters, be they policymakers, be they anybody else? And then understanding that we are going to have to change and we are going to have to evolve and we are absolutely going to have to be prepared for the future, which does require a reinvestment of human capital. It requires a reinvestment of resources and several other things. And I don't know if any organization ever gets that balance entirely right. I think, frankly, you probably swing a little bit like a pendulum, and in some instances, you're probably focused a little bit more on the future, and in others, then you have to turn that rheostat back and you have to focus on what are the needs of today. And so, at the end of the day, I don't know that we'll ever be completely satisfied that we've got that balance correct, but what I also know is that it's something that we have to constantly be reassessing and reevaluating and then making the adjustments towards that balance as we move forward. But I really do think that that is the kind of the existential question for the future of the enterprise, is how do we continue to sustain with our partners, retain their credibility, our credibility, retain their confidence, and then also be postured for a future that is going to be very, very different from a GEOINT standpoint from what we see today.
And I think you're exactly right, Charlie. It is that balance every day between how do we take care of the mission today while we're preparing for tomorrow. The biggest challenge we have, and where we need the constant help, or maybe not constant help, but our biggest challenge is how do we take those bright ideas that get started in a pilot or get started with a group of individuals who form a team and are very creative and innovative, and they're able to do something within that team and within that environment. And how do we take that and scale it across the enterprise? And that's one of the questions as I see the different demos at the booths, and I see about what could be done with analytics is, okay, does it scale? How does it scale? What can it be used with? Is it interoperable with what we have now? Or are we going to have to wait 5 years? because our workforce is not going to wait 5 years. They have a mission to do. And if you promise them that you're going to make this better in 5 years, they say, okay, that's great. I'm going back to work. Let me know when it's ready. But if you can deliver something that they can use and they find the value in that, then they're going to tell their friend that there's value there. And they're going to tell the next friend, and then we're going to bring it in. But we have to constantly think, how do we scale this? How do we make it enterprise-wide?
Can I ask on that? So this morning, Deputy DNI Sue Gordon made the assertive statement that if you're not, for industry vendors and providers, if you're not eyesight compliant, you're not on team national security. So how would you assess the GEOINT Enterprise's readiness for accepting across all that enterprise eyesight-specific, eyesight-compliant capabilities? Is that helping you scale? Is it, do you declare that a success and that's the paradigm now? How do you think of that?
So as I think of eyesight, I think, yes, it is the paradigm. That is where we want to be. It gets back to the point that, once again, I'm going to say no one in can save the world. No one in is going to answer all the questions. And until we reach a point where we can integrate our data better and we can understand it better, we're not going to have achieved everything that we can achieve, and we're not going to have reached every outcome that is part of that vision. And we're working toward it. Are there challenges? Yes. Do we need to keep our legacy stuff going? Yes. And we also take into account GEOINT it's big data. It's a data hog. And that presents some challenges for technology. But I do have the confidence that we're going to overcome them, and that is our future.
Okay, let's stick on that theme a little bit. A couple of questions specifically about a dominant theme of the conference and the IC, AI/ML. This one, I have one for Sergeant Cleveland and one for
That's going to stick, Charlie.
It is
I
going
take
to
it as a
stick,
compliment.
okay?
There are NCOs out in the audience, and I've seen some of them, and they're just cringing at the idea they'd never accept me into their ranks. So I will take it as a compliment.
see the Admiral smiling down
Yeah.
there. General Cleveland, there's been a lot of focus on using AAA for the actual tradecraft of analysis. Can you speak to how you value that and whether you value another area of analytics, specifically business intelligence?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of what I value most out of analysis, and it has been renewed as I have rejoined this enterprise, is fundamentally our people. It doesn't matter whether we title it as business analytics or how they're using AAA or whatever the case may be, but fundamentally the individual analyst and their initiative and their ability to adapt to what is coming out there, to me, is what our advantage is. And that becomes a huge focus in terms of being able to prepare our individuals to receive and engage with, whether it's AAA, whether it's other techniques and other things that are coming down the pike. So I guess first and foremost to me is the quality of the individual analyst and our ability to continue to inspire them to be engaged and to learn these new traits and these new TTPs that are coming on. That said, on the AAA piece, I think we all know that regardless of what we call it, the use of machines is absolutely going to have to increase by our analytic workforce. And we've heard several people talk about it. Sue talked about it earlier today. Lisa Porter talked about it. But fundamentally, we want these machines to be able to assist our analysts. And what I do believe is if we can get the basics into their hands, our analysts will figure out the appropriate application and the best way to use it. And then it's got to be a bit of a partnership and a give and take to further refine exactly what these new systems and what these new opportunities are bringing. And again, I believe that's best handled and best done by giving the analysts the opportunity to really engage directly with that.
A kind of corollary question was for you. Do any partners in the NSG already have AI/ML solutions that NGA Mothership has not yet adopted? And are you satisfied with the agency's evaluation processes for new innovations?
So yes, I say that there are capabilities across the NSG. And we have an effort going on right now where we are looking at all of them and what those capabilities are. It's something we're going to present to our senior leaders, to those senior to us, near the end of this month to say, here's where all the brilliance is. And it is quite wide. We've categorized it into different parts of our mission and functions, such as automated target recognition or search or alerts. And then, okay, how do we bring this together? And maybe there isn't a best of breed. I mean, there are different apps that everybody uses. Some people like, I probably shouldn't say which maps, which one worked best, but some people like one form of a map, some like another form of a map on their phones. So there's different applications and how they work and what question they're trying to answer. But it's really about how do we bring it together? How do we increase the awareness that things are out there so we're not recreating it? And how do we make sure that it is something that the enterprise can use and not just the team that developed it? Also, where they reside, and how do we broaden the access to it and broaden the access to the different repositories?
That's related to your earlier comments on scale as you see
Correct.
these solutions, yeah. Um, um, a very direct one, maybe you've already touched on this, Ms. Daniel. How can an industry partner with the NSG? That's a pretty direct. I think you've outlined many of those areas, but are you getting the degree of, obviously the agency's support for GEOINT and USGIF is demonstrable. Are you satisfied that you're getting the range from non-traditional performers? We just had a great presentation on the use of study contracts, which sounded very innovative for reaching new people, and how they reached out over Twitter and social media to popularize that, not just FESBIZ ops.
Right.
How's your degree of satisfaction with your outreach?
I'm thinking at it from an NSG perspective. I think we could improve in that area. I think we have a variety of efforts going on, and we have a variety of touch points, but those touch points are all going into the individual parts of the NSG, and then the members of the NSG are bringing those together. We handle a lot of that. We bring a lot of that together through the GEOCOM, the Geospatial Intelligence Committee, and one of our subcommittees. We have a subcommittee that is focused on the technology and how we look at technology across the board. And I will say that the industry engagement is not focused on the NSG as much as it is on the individual parts. But that committee then can compare notes and work together in how do we share. And rather than each of us going off and purchasing the same thing or going after different things, let's figure out how we bring it together. But it's incumbent on each member to bring forward what they've learned and what they're pursuing so that we can then integrate it.
That's one of the best pieces of enterprise planning descriptions I've heard in a long time. I like that. I like that. This is an interesting question from the audience. Doesn't say to whom, so either or both. From the beginning, U.S. imagery has been shared with allies and coalition partners on a no-cost basis. Will NGA revise this policy to require these partners to pay for imagery from the U.S. national imagery providers, U.S. commercial imagery providers? Require the partners to pay.
No.
That's a good one. Okay. Definitive. Answer. Asked and answered.
There you go.
Back on technology, Ms. Daniel, you referenced the MAGE capability, also highlighted during yesterday's initial panel. MAGE seems like a great capability. Is it a program of record? If not, what is NGA doing to ensure that it becomes an enduring capability?
Can I call on a friend for that? Because I don't think I mentioned MAGE. I did see the presentation yesterday. I believe that it's not currently a program of record, but we are evaluating it and figuring out how we're going to move forward. If there's someone here maybe I should phone a friend who could answer that better.
It's okay. That's a good enough answer. John Cleveland, you mentioned space, the domain. How will NGA support the Space Force, Space Command, and SDA? Will you support with billets or just GEOINT product?
Yeah, so a tremendous question. And again, we'll only scratch the surface today. I think the opportunities to support in space are going to continue to, frankly, present, and we will continue to try and figure them out. So in the short term, to answer the question, yes, we will support with billets, and yes, we will support with products. But I think what is going to be most important is ensuring that we have GEOINTers who are embedded as a part of these larger space activities and these elements that are growing, and have them work with the various space components to figure out what the future should look like. Obviously, there are going to be some things that we can predict that we will be focused on, and there will be an image component and a terrestrial component, et cetera. But I think there's a whole new world of new areas that we haven't even conceived of yet that are going to present, that we know that we are going to want to pursue, and we know that we're going to be able to contribute, and we know that we're going to be able to add value to. And again, I believe the way that we're going to have to do it is by getting the appropriate people engaged at the right levels to just essentially figure it out, to start experimenting, to start using their initiative, and to be innovative, to look at what opportunities can present and how can we better apply GEOINT to support that. My experience with the GEOINT community, again, I'm new into really being a part of the community, but I have long been a customer and a partner. And my experience with the GEOINT community has been that you go up and you talk to somebody and you don't know exactly what it is you want. You say, hey, I'm kind of looking for something generally along these lines. And typically what will happen is a GEOINTer comes back and they present you with this tremendous solution that was a heavy lift, but all of a sudden becomes the new standard. And now everybody wants to be doing that. And so as we move forward and we look at the opportunities with space, I think in many ways we know a few of the areas that we'll contribute to. Again, billets, products, whatever the case may be. Most important, though, I think we're going to have a huge future in terms of trying to figure out what other things the GEOINT community can do.
That seems related to this question, which I think both of you probably have an opinion on. For mission today, how is the GEOINT prepared for support for MDO, multi-domain operations, and how about for mission tomorrow?
Sure. You know, simply stated, we're probably not as well prepared as any of us would like to be. We do have a number of capabilities and a number of skills and a number of opportunities that will help. But I think fundamentally we are seeing, again, I mentioned earlier, this inflection point. And I think that as we look at the MDO fight, we still have a lot to learn on exactly how we can best contribute. But again, I remain convinced the way we best contribute to that is by having sharp people engage with our partners and then working together to figure out what those solutions are going to be.
Great answer.
This is an interesting take on the NSG discussion. Ms. Daniel, what are your thoughts on involving NSG members, specifically the military services, in the development of NSG strategies?
So I would like to talk to the individual who asked that question, because I think that it can't be an NSG strategy unless we've had the military members be part of that conversation in the development. Our NSG strategy talks to all aspects of our business with interoperability and professionalization and partnerships. And they are involved in the development of that strategy, and they are involved in everything that we do. And if they're not, or they don't feel they are, come see me or a member of my team. We have our NSG, our NST support teams, our NGA support teams, with all of the services. And we'd like to find out why you feel that way and what we need to do to fix it.
Good answer. Now, this is a very specific question, has NGA, I'm going to take the privilege of maybe doing a follow-up question off of this. Has NGA produced an unclassified report on China's BRI, Belt and Road Initiative? If not, please do so. That's the question.
Short answer is I don't know, but I go back to PDD&I Sue Gordon today, and her request to all of us that fundamentally, if we're presenting and providing information that ultimately our policymakers and our decision makers can't access for whatever reason, then it is absolutely up to us to be able to repackage it and ensure that it gets the widest use and the widest dissemination. And so certainly any efforts and any thoughts on BRI are going to be something that we want to have a role in and a voice in. And fundamentally, it will be up to us to make sure that our partners can receive that type of analysis and those types of assessments in the appropriate forums.
My rationale for supplementing this is looking down at the director. One thing Admiral Sharp has done in the past when he was in his previous role was the Global Maritime Forum, overseeing that. And it was a valuable conglomeration of outside partnerships, including academia very heavily. Commercial shipping, everything else from the maritime domain perspective. But that question makes me, and so I participated in that too, but the question, have you produced an unclassified report on that particular policy, that particular international topic? If not, please do so. The flip side of that question is, how do you bring unclassified information in the world of publicly available information, PAI? We've had a lot of discussion in the last couple of days about how to make use of that for the public. You talked about humanitarian efforts and otherwise. How does that data actually improve our classified analysis and workflow as well?
The unclassified
The
data?
unclassified. Are we making optimal use of publicly available information for up the stack classified assessments, analytics? It's a difficult problem sometimes, both because of the technical platforms and also just traditional lack of use of that.
Right. Do you want to
Sure.
start?
Yeah, I could start that, and I know we're beginning to run out of time, but again, an area that I know that we would all agree that we can do better on, but I think a very strong recognition that information doesn't have to come from a classified source to still be of value. And so the information that we get from, in the case of commercial imagery or a number of other publicly available activities, absolutely has tremendous value because it supplements the larger body of information and the larger body then of knowledge. And so I'm sure we are constantly looking for better ways to identify the wheat from the chaff and be able to rapidly identify what is most important out of this publicly available information. But fundamentally, I think there is a recognition everywhere that it's a tremendous source. And we absolutely have to continue to figure out how to best harvest it, how to incorporate it into our workflows, and then fundamentally, how to be able to add it into our larger analysis.
And I say that is true across all of our partners, across the National System for Geospatial Intelligence, as well as the Allied System for Geospatial Intelligence. And I'm going to go back, and I actually went back in my notes because I want to quote our director and our GEOINT functional manager when he said, I want all the information. I don't care where it comes from. I want all of it, and I want the ability to use it and connect it and produce intelligence.
Omniscience on demand.
Yes, indeed.
That's right.
It's a powerful vision.
Indeed.
You want some? Okay.
He didn't have a mic, but he said, I don't know what that means, but I want it. So, well, we are out of time, unfortunately, but I would like to have all of us thank General Cleveland and Ms. Daniel for a fantastic session.